Good afternoon and welcome to another Memo in Conversation. My name is Lauren and I'm a staff writer at Middle East Monitor. Today I am joined by Roua Naboulsi, the festival coordinator for the upcoming London Palestine Film Festival, which is set to kick off this Friday, the 13th of November. We'll be discussing the use of cinema as a medium to showcase Palestinian stories and depictions of life under the Israeli military occupation. Roua joined the London Palestine Film Festival in 2018 as an events coordinator specialising in Arabic culture. Her work ranges from theatre and music concerts to cultural festivals and much, much more. Welcome, Roua. Thank you for joining us today. Let's start by talking about how and why the Palestine Film Festival was originally set up.
Thank you for having me. So the festival was set up to create a stimulating platform to bring together filmmakers and scholars and the general public as well, just to sort of facilitate the crucial dialogue around Palestine that we feel is necessary, that needs to happen. And we kind of wanted to create a platform in London to shine a light on Palestine's film industry, its culture, its people, and its politics. So the London Palestine Film Festival has been going for many years now, and we're quite a small team, but we basically work around the clock to kind of bring together this platform for people.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to see that this year, like you said, that's come from London. It covers an extremely wide range of topics from places such as the occupied West Bank, the Gaza Strip, and even in the Palestinian diaspora. Why do you feel that film is an important medium to depict Palestinian stories? And why is it so effective in doing so?
So I think when people think of Palestine, especially in the West, it can be really easy to have like a kind of two-dimensional idea of what that means. And I think the lives of Palestinians tend to be limited to sort of almost being like collateral damage at best of an occupation. And so I think through the festival, what we want to do is challenge that two-dimensional view. And we want to kind of showcase the rich and diverse experience of being Palestinian. And we kind of want to showcase a variety of genres and talents and conversations taking place within Palestine's film industry. And I think art and cinema is just such a great way to kind of convey this multi-dimensionality, I guess, because art doesn't really shy away from the hard questions, and it doesn't sort of sugarcoat anything, but it is also still a format that brings a kind of a more human light. And it kind of gives depth to Palestinian voices at the same time. And I think, it can be really easy when Palestinians are reduced to numbers to kind of forget about it and to kind of forget about the humanity behind that. And people hear or think of Gaza or the West Bank, and they have very, very specific ideas of what it means to live there, to be from there, to kind of have any kind of connection with that region. So I think what I love about the festival itself and what makes me really passionate about what we do is that, and about kind of the Palestine film industry in the first place, is that when you get to watch so many films around the subject, you kind of realize how many genres there are, from comedy and romance and kind of all the genres you would expect from a film industry of any country. But then there's also the more difficult to watch films as well. And there's the ones kind of that are a bit more serious. And there's the documentaries that can be quite harrowing. But I think what's interesting as well is that you kind of never really know going into it, as someone who's just watched so many of them. You don't know which ones are going to hit you harder. You don't know if the documentaries are actually going to leave you feeling more emotional than the comedies and the romance, because I think they all encapsulate the Palestinian experience so fully in their own ways and so differently. And I think that's exactly what we want to highlight and showcase through the festival. And that's why cinema is just such an effective medium to talk about Palestine and being Palestinian.
Like you said, obviously the medium of cinema, it makes them can make them very hard hitting. And personally, I believe that's something the media helps get across the audience. But obviously this year, the festival is going to be extremely different because of the coronavirus pandemic. So how have you adapted the festival to deal with those changing circumstances and essentially keep the hard-hitting efficacy of the films intact?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because, of course, this year is very different. It couldn't be more different because it's all online due to the lockdown in the UK. So I think, yeah, it's hard because a key aim of the festival is to generate dialogue. And so, you know, it's difficult because we want people to be having conversations around the films. It's not like going to the cinema to see like a blockbuster film from Hollywood where, you know, you can kind of watch it and then you walk away from it and that's it. We want people to talk about it and we want people to reflect and think on it. So we've had to think really hard about how to replicate that kind of feeling of, I don't know, open-mindedness and community, because it's like, for me, as someone who attends most of our screenings, it's so interesting watching people leaving the cinema after a film is over and just hearing what they're saying to each other because they go in a group of friends, and just seeing their face, seeing what they're saying, seeing like their physical reaction to certain films is just invaluable, I think, and definitely encourages me in what I do. So this year, we've had to kind of really adjust that. And so what we've done is, as well as providing films that, to be fair, already speak for themselves with how powerful they are and just sort of already are going to leave you reflecting anyway. But on top of that, we've created a lot of content for people. So introductions by the filmmakers. And I guess it's kind of exciting because you couldn't have got every filmmaker to come and introduce their film last year. Whereas now, because it's online, it's quite cool to have each filmmaker be able to talk about their film to our audiences. And we've also got some recorded Q&A discussions that I think will really give audience members that extra material to kind of supplement the film and keep the dialogue going and keep the thinking going, although we're online this year.
Yeah, and like you said, those films are really important to generate dialogue and spark those open-minded conversations. And obviously, with being online this year, will there be Q&A sessions with directors after screenings, or is there another way for viewers to ask those questions if they aren't necessarily watching the films in a cinema altogether?
Yeah, so what we've done this year is we've opted for pre-recorded discussions. So I think discussions are another way in which we sort of provide audience members with that extra bit of insight into films. And so we've been able to, through using Zoom and sort of through doing it online, we've been able to sort of gather people to have really interesting conversations who probably would have never made it to the same room, just logistically from being in different sides of the world. And so we have opted for doing pre-recorded discussions. But of course, you know, we are hoping that we will be seeing much more engagement online rather than in person, of people getting in touch with us and telling us what they thought of certain films and sort of having their own discussions through our social media and through their own social media to kind of talk to each other and connect with each other. And sort of, we'd love to hear people's thoughts and love to get the feedback, and we'll be sharing that on our platforms as well.
And like you said, with it being online, how does that change the experience of the films?
Yeah, I think it would definitely change it quite a lot. I think, like I said before, it's like when you go to the cinema, it's not necessarily just about consuming content. It's an outing, it's a group experience, especially when you go with friends or, you know, whoever you go with. And even if you go alone, I think a lot of people love going to the cinema alone. And you still get something out of it because of that thing I described of when people are filing out of the cinema, they're kind of still talking about it. So I do think that, you know, there is something to be said there for that.
Yeah, and of course, with it being online this year, how exactly can the viewers access the films? Will they all be online at the same time, or is there different screening times for each film?
So all the films will go live on the same day. And so when you purchase access to a film, so it's a bit like buying a ticket, you will have access to that film for 48 hours, and you'll have access to all the sort of extra footage that would come with it. So the intros or the discussion that comes with it, you'd have all of that to watch in those 48 hours.
Okay, and how much those tickets are going to cost, and how is it on your website that we can buy them?
Yeah, so we are co-hosting, well, or rather we are sort of, our festival is going to be partially hosted at the Barbican this year. So usually we have a wide range of cinemas, but just sort of like logistically, the Barbican will be hosting some of our screenings, and the rest of them will be through Vimeo on demand, and all of them can be accessed very simply through our website. So if you go to palestinefilm.org.uk, you can see our full program there and then navigate to either the Barbican website or Vimeo on demand in order to make your purchase. And films are all going to be around £6 for the whole experience, and that includes all the extra content and all the kind of, anything that comes with it.
Yeah, it's great to hear that you've been able to adapt to the current circumstances so well, and keep the festival as similar as it has been to the previous years as possible. And I can see that it's a jam-packed schedule of submissions, essentially. But are there any particular highlights that are perhaps different from what maybe previous years of the festival has shown that you would recommend?
Yeah, so I think that's always a really hard question, because I genuinely just want to say all of them. But to be more specific, I do think this year the program is really exciting because we've just got such a strong range of genres and of films. And so anything from documentaries to some really brilliant features this year to some more creative and experimental work that kind of almost, I'd say, even pushes the boundaries of what we expect from cinema. So to narrow that down, though, I suppose one of the more unusual films is actually titled An Unusual Summer, fittingly. So I would definitely recommend that one for anyone interested in experimental cinema. So filmmaker Kamel Jafari's father installed a camera, so sort of like a CCTV camera outside his family home following a vandalism incident, or a couple vandalism incidents. So he decides to put this camera up only with the purpose of, finding out who's vandalizing his car. But actually, he ends up capturing this footage that almost unfolds like a diary of the Palestinian city of Ramle, where they're based, and its inhabitants as well, because, just people are just constantly coming and going. And so Kamal, he found this footage and turned it into this really creative and interesting piece of cinema. And I think it's just a really unique way of telling the story of a Palestinian city. So I would highly recommend that one. And maybe if you're looking for maybe some new younger filmmakers, our Laptop Multi-Short Spill, which is made up of 3 short films, is really excellent. It features some young voices and looks at their very unique and different experiences of being Palestinian. And it's almost like you get a window into each person's universe in a way that I think stays with you. It kind of lingers, and you kind of get so sucked into their world in such a short film, and then you kind of have to almost wake up and be like, oh yeah, I'm still here, which I just think is excellent. And then, I could go on forever, but I won't. I'm just going to say, for investigative journalism, if that's something you're interested in, I really recommend our Letter to a Friend and Triple Chaser double bill. So there's the 2 films which both overlap in their exploration of the use and the effect of tear gas, both in Palestine and globally. And I think what's really interesting about forensic architecture and the project itself is that it's a serious investigation, but it's taking place in an art institution context. And I think it's just really fascinating that investigations have made their way into museums and into cinema and film as well. And I think the one thing to note about this whole project is that they're doing something really subversive, because they've been commissioned at the Whitney Museum. And so they use that commission role at the museum and the money of the museum to shine a light on something that the chairman of the museum is doing, which is that he's complicit in tear gas manufacturing. And so they've taken the money from the museum and are kind of really subverting what they do with it and how they create art. And I think his eventual resignation following this investigation is actually a testament to the power of art, cinema, and sort of like journalistic investigation all coming together. And it's just so interesting to watch that unfold and sort of what that means and what the boundaries of art even are.
Yeah, and you're speaking there of such a wide range of filming techniques and such a wide range of topics as well. Is there something that ties them all together? Was there a specific way that a theme that submissions had to follow, or was there a specific criteria that they had to follow?
So I think quite often the films have their own natural kind of synergy, because we don't set like a genre or anything like that. But I think what happens is that what's coming out of Palestinian cinema at any given time is a reflection of the mood and what people are experiencing and what Palestinians have to say at the time. So although we don't actually restrict it by any criteria, I would say that, you know, we do have a wide range, but also there is probably, you know, quite naturally a lot of overlap in what filmmakers want to say about Palestine, and what they want to say now is very different to what they wanted to say 10 years ago. And it's going to be, you know, who knows, maybe even this time next year, it's going to be completely different because the situation changes all the time.
Yeah, of course, it's constantly changing. And with the submission, well, the films that you're showing over the next sort of 2 weeks, will there be any awards for them?
No, so we don't sort of give awards. So what we do is just more like just showcasing them and kind of creating a platform where people can access them and talk about them. And that's sort of more the scope of the festival.
Wonderful. Thank you, Roua. I think that just about concludes our time. Thank you very much for joining us today and giving us a fascinating insight into the London Palestine Film Festival. And of course, best of luck for the festival.
Thank you so much for having me. And remember, so tickets go live on Friday, so palestinefilm.org.uk.
Yeah. So like you just said, I'm going to reiterate it. The festival opens on Friday at 10 a.m. and can be accessed from then on via the London Palestine Film Festival website. The link to the website will be attached to the live stream of this event, both on the MEMO website and on our Facebook page, as well as the London Palestine Film Festival's Facebook page, where this was also live streamed too. To the viewers, thank you very much for joining us today. We'll be back at 4 p.m. next Wednesday for the next instalment of MEMO in Conversation, where we'll be joined by another guest. We look forward to seeing you then. Thank you very much. Goodbye.